Zeke Miller is a White House reporter for the Associated Press and CBSN contributor. He joins me from Washington, D.C. Zeke, you heard the president condemning North Korea once again. What is his goal? What is he trying to accomplish during this trip when it comes to putting pressure on the regime?
I think one of the things the White House has made clear on the way into this trip is that the president is trying to build continuously apply pressure on the North Korean government to try to get them to denuclearize. That's something that cannot be accomplished on a bilateral, even a multilateral basis. It requires an entire regional, if not global, approach, and that's something that the president will be talking about with all the players in the region. But particularly as he goes this week, from Japan to South Korea to China, the North Korean government lead outside sponsor and ally. North Korea is front and center here, and the president's message in Japan and South Korea will be a lot about regional cooperation, and in China will be how to pressure and get the Chinese government to apply pressure onto the North Korean government to try to begin denuclearization, if that's even at all possible.
So another big ticket item is trade. We saw some very cool images coming out of Japan. It seems that the president and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan do have a very good relationship. We saw them signing, the golf hats. We saw them playing golf. They seem to be enjoying each other's company. Shinzo Abe very clear with the president on the threat to North Korea, less clear on trade when it comes to Japan, a $69 billion trade deficit with that country. Every time the president seemed to dig in to the prime minister, the prime minister to deflect any question around trade. Did the president leave empty-handed from Japan?
Certainly, he hasn't left quite just yet, and we haven't seen. But really, there are no signs of deliverables here. That's maybe a theme that we'll see throughout this trip. The White House didn't really say what was what their aims were from a policy perspective. A lot more was about relationship building or signaling, or in the case of North Korea, about obtaining new assurances from governments in the region, but not much in the way of concrete proposals of things that they were looking for. In the case of Japan, where the president walked into the administration and canceled the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that was an agreement that Shinzo Abe was obviously a big proponent of. There don't seem to be very many developments of any concrete form on the trade front in Japan. The same thing may repeat itself in South Korea and in China as well.
And as he makes his way across East Asia and he heads to Korea, clearly, as we pointed out, Shinzo Abe of Japan is with the president when it comes to being tough on North Korea. Less so that the president might see from South Korea. Moon Jae-in and other leaders in South Korea have suggested diplomacy is something that they'd like to see. And certainly, I suspect that will be China's tact as well. More diplomatic solutions, less of an aggressive military one. What do you suspect will give us a preview of that meeting with South Korea?
The president has been critical, obviously, of this newish South Korean government on Twitter in the past, and there's going to be a big show here, an attempt at least to show unity, a united front against the North Korean government. But it really is one of those big question marks surrounding this trip. What does the president want to do diplomatically versus militarily? What options are available? Obviously, just this past week, senior military officials telling Congress that there really are no good military solutions to North Korea and its nuclear threat. So if that only leaves diplomacy or economic pressures or sanctions or things like that, just what is the president going to be able to show and deliver on that front out of this trip? Or the White House has said there's no more road left to kick the can down, but on this trip there doesn't seem to be a real victory here yet or insight for the president on this front.
Yeah, remember who else said there were no good military options in North Korea when it comes to North Korea, Zeke? Steve Bannon. Who told our Charlie Rose. So we'll see how that all plays out. Zeke Miller of the AP, as always, my friend, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.